Myself, Manush, and today I'm going to talk about normalization and DBMS and database security. Basically, we'll see how we can organize data properly in a database, why normalization is needed, and how we go from UNF to 1NF, 2NF, and finally 3NF. And at the end, I'll also briefly talk about database security. So, first of all, what exactly is normalization? In simple words, normalization means organizing data properly in a database. The main idea is to avoid storing the same information again and again. For example, if we keep repeating the same customer or branch information in many rows, it takes more space and can also cause mistakes. So normalization helps us reduce duplicate data, avoid problems, and keep our database consistent. Now, why do we actually need normalization? The main reason is to avoid problems caused by badly organized data. For example, we might have duplicate data, which means the same information is stored multiple times. Then we have something called anomalies. There are three common types: insertion, update, and deletion anomalies. In simple terms, these problems can make it difficult to add, change, or remove information correctly. So basically, normalization makes the database cleaner and easier to manage. Now let's look at UNF, or unnormalized form. Here, we can see that multiple account details are stored inside a single cell. For example, one customer can have two accounts, and both account details are written in the same cell. The problem is that one cell should ideally contain one value, so this data is not atomic, and it becomes difficult to search or update. And that's where 1NF, or first normal form, comes in. The main rule of 1NF is pretty simple. One cell should contain one value. So instead of putting two accounts in one cell, we put each account in a separate row. We also remove repeating groups and make sure each row can be uniquely identified. Basically, 1NF takes our messy data and makes it much more organized. Next, we have 2NF, or second normal form. Before reaching 2NF, the table must already be in 1NF. The main thing we remove here is called partial dependency. Don't worry, the name sounds complicated, but the basic idea is simple. We separate information that doesn't depend on the complete key. So here we divide the information into separate tables like customer, account, and customer account. This reduces duplication and makes the database easier to update. Now we move to 3NF, or third normal form. Again, the table must already be in 2NF. This time, we remove something called transitive dependency. In our example, instead of keeping branch information directly with the account, we create a separate branch table. Then the account table uses a branch ID to connect to it. So, each piece of information is stored where it actually belongs. This reduces repetition and improves data integrity. Now, organizing data is important, but we also need to protect that data. That's where database security comes in. Database security is basically about making sure that only authorized people can access or change our data. Some important methods are authentication, authorization, encryption, backups, firewalls, and regular maintenance. For example, authentication checks who the user is, while authorization decides what that user is allowed to access. So normalization organizes our data, while security protects it. So what do we get from normalization? First, it reduces duplicate data. It also improves consistency because we don't have unnecessary copies of the same information. It improves data integrity, makes maintenance easier, and can save storage space. Basically, a well-organized database is much easier to manage than a huge table full of repeated information. So, let's quickly recap everything. We start with UNF, where we can have multiple values in one cell. Then we move to 1NF, where every cell contains an atomic value. After that comes 2NF, where we remove partial dependencies and split the data into suitable tables. And finally 3NF, where we remove transitive dependencies. So the basic flow is UNF, 1NF, 2NF, 3NF. Each step makes the database more organized and reduces unnecessary repetition. So, to conclude, normalization is basically a way of organizing database information properly. It helps reduce redundancy, avoid anomalies, improve consistency, and maintain data integrity. And when we combine good database design with proper security, our data becomes both well organized and protected. That's all from my side.